Well, communication is the key to every relationship, right? But when the market goes bad, how are you talking to your spouse about finances? What kind of conversations are you having? Better yet, are you having arguments about what's happening in the market? We'll discuss these conversations, how to work through them, and how to talk to your spouse about these market crash fears. Welcome in. This is Legacy Beyond Wealth. I'm Ben George with Rob Shelton, founder of Axio Wealth Management. And Rob, I don't know how many conversations you're having right now as we're kind of dealing with some market crash concerns right now. But I know in the course of your everyday workflow, you're talking to the couples all the time about communicating about money and to have these conversations. I'm sure it's just exacerbated in times like these.
It is. And I think the best analogy for this is thinking about when you have an umbrella. And when you're unprepared and you're stuck in a rainstorm and you don't have an umbrella, that's the worst time to be looking for one, right? But having the conversation ahead of time, and especially making sure that spouse is involved, boy, that's like putting the umbrella in the car and just making sure that you're prepared for it. But I love that we prepared a few questions here to go through, and hopefully helping people as they're having that discussion and communication with their spouse about the downturn and maybe some stress that it's providing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a few questions that we're going to propose and have you kind of explain how you want to work through them with your spouse. And again, it's all about the emotional side of investing, which is a big part of it, especially in times of turbulence. If you have questions for Rob, AxioWM.com is the best place to start. Learn more about Axio Wealth Management there, but also schedule that discovery call to begin having conversation with Rob and the team to figure out, hey, what is the best path forward for us? What are my big concerns? How can I alleviate some of those concerns? First question here, Rob, is are you on the same page about your long-term plan, or does one of you panic while the other stays calm? I'm sure this is pretty natural to have different feelings around what's happening.
It is. And I've never met any couple that is exactly the same. So I think the first thing by asking this question is identifying what type of personality you have. And it's okay to be one that's a little bit more of a nervous individual that tends to react a little bit more emotionally when markets go down. But it's also okay to be one that wants to take on a lot of risk. And if you're in that marriage where one's really nervous and one wants to take on a lot of risk, it's just about having that communication before the downturn happens, so things are balanced. I think of one client we just brought on, a husband and wife, and they came on just at the beginning of this year. And one was willing to take on a lot more risk and the other one wasn't. And so we designed a plan that took both of those things into consideration. So as the market did have the volatility and the downturns happening, the nice thing is there's not this added stress of I told you so by being too aggressive or being too conservative, but taking both sides into consideration. And so those are the types of conversations you need to be having. And hopefully the type of financial plan you have is, one, identifying the type of individual that you are and that your spouse is, and custom designing a plan built around that can help that communication be so much easier when things get rough.
Absolutely. And the next one, and this one's going to be a tough one, I think, for a lot of people. And I think this has been kind of the case over the last number of years now. But how do you balance facts with feelings in your household when the headlines are scary? And, some are going to be scarier than others to us. And we all, again, react a little differently to the headlines, but they can really drive some separation between a couple.
Yeah. And I would say there is a lot of debate in the world about what a fact is. I mean, we hear so much out there about what is considered to be fake news or reliable news and reliable media. And the other day I was talking to someone, they go, I don't trust anything that's not on Facebook, which I thought that's probably the worst, source to be able to trust. But for them, that algorithm feeds them exactly what they want to be able to hear. And so because that's it, it's kind of created that echo chamber that sounds, it's a reinforcement, not necessarily looking at what fact is. And so I think the first thing you need to look at is maybe the headlines that are coming in. I think that you need to have some trusted voices that are grounded in your life that you can be able to look back and say, you know what? I'm working with a professional that are grounded. We're going to follow that advice, maybe than the national headlines that tend to be out there. So I think the first thing that we need to do is for that couple to be able to look at what sources they're looking at and seeing if they're even legitimate, or are they using facts to create a sense of urgency or trying to create those feelings that are inside of you for whatever reason.
How often are you having conversations about that, Rob, when somebody maybe comes in and says, "Hey, I saw this or read this," and it may not have to be, anything political necessarily, just, "Hey, Social Security is going away," or just headlines that they might read that they have concerns about. How often do you hear from people that you have to kind of help balance those facts and feelings?
First and foremost, I always encourage it. I love hearing from clients when they go, "Hey, I got this newsletter. I got this video I want you to watch. I got this Facebook post I want you to be able to read." First and foremost, so I can be able to see where the client's getting the information, and then we can look at the context of that and then provide some feedback that's critical. And I love walking and talking through things in a very collaborative environment with a client. I love that I have professionals that I look up to and that I utilize that I can be able to bounce ideas off of. I don't think any of us have a corner on being the smartest person that's out there. But what I love is when we can work together in a collaborative environment and look at all sides of an issue, we usually come to a clearer picture that's out there. So you asked the question there, Ben, of how many times we have in that conversations. I encourage that every time we meet with a client is love to see what questions are on their minds, what concerns they have, and making sure we're walking through and talking about that. And that helps give us great insight into that client that we can custom design and custom tailor an investment plan for them that meets and matches with their concerns and their fears.
Are you ready to unlock the freedom to live your best life? Schedule your no-cost 60-minute discovery meeting with our team today. During this session, we'll take the time to understand your family story and financial dreams. Together, we'll craft a personalized roadmap designed to help you achieve your goals. Let's explore how we can unlock the freedom for you and your family to thrive. Just click the link in the description of today's show to get started.
Love that. We're talking about how to talk to your spouse at times of worry and concern about the way the market is performing. Great time too to kind of have that conversation about, hey, have you actually talked about your risk tolerance, and are you on the same page, or are you just assuming that your spouse feels the same way as you?
I look at it as well. We'll talk a little bit here about risk tolerance. When a client comes in and meets with us for that discovery meeting, many times we'll talk and they go, "You know what? We've never sat down to ask each other these types of questions and get on the same page as you're asking us." And that's okay. And when we know that and we expect it, but having those questions up front and being prepared about it provides a lot of security down the road in your marriage when you're talking about feelings. Because if you're like my marriage, the worst time you could talk about something is when both are highly charged or emotional. But it's kind of like that ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And if we can talk about those things before the downturn happens, or we can communicate about it when both people are calm and in a clear-headed mindset, boy, that makes a whole difference. So having those discussions about risk tolerance, maybe the best time to have it isn't necessarily when the downturn happened, but to commit to saying, "Hey, we really need to take a solid look at this and make sure we have a plan ahead of time for when that downturn does come."
Yeah, another thing that you would want to be having a conversation about earlier than later is this next question, right? What role does money play in your sense of security? And does your partner feel the same way? And I guess I'm assuming, Rob, this is something you're talking about during the planning process in good times and bad.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love to ask is how much cash do we need to have on hand? You hear us talk about cash quite a bit. And the reason being is because cash is so vital to meeting your short-term goals that it shouldn't be invested and have a lot of risk that's associated with it. And we'd say, you plan on using money in the next 3 years from your investments, it shouldn't be in the stock market. The stock market works best for investments over a longer period of time. And so a lot of times it's about finding that the money is allocated to the right place. But I love to ask the question to spouses, "Hey, how much cash do you feel like we should have in the bank account over the next 3 years?" And it's interesting to see them talk. And sometimes they're pretty close and sometimes they're way far apart. But again, at least having that conversation. And what I like about it is we can do it in a non-threatening environment. It's nice to be that third party where it's not the spouses against themselves. And for lack of a better term, I can be the bad guy and maybe challenge a little bit and someone's thoughts or beliefs or where they feel like things should be at, just to get to the true root of everything. Where if that's a spouse, they may feel like that's an attack. by not being a third party. So I think really that sense of security, that a lot of times is really well dealt with by a third party, and having that conversation with somebody so your partner doesn't feel like you're being attacked.
All right, last one here is, do you both know the plan, or is one person doing everything while the other person's kind of flying blind in terms of finances? And I'm sure this is not a rare thing for a lot of couples.
No, in fact, it's true for mine. If my wife does not love finances a ton, and talking about it in investments and things of that nature. And you look at studies, and there's people out there that'd rather go get a tooth pulled than to go talk about money and finances. And so, totally get that. Typically, we find there's one spouse that's more attracted to planning and doing the planning than the other. And what we only ask is that at least once a year, we get a chance to meet with both spouses, because this is important that they both understand the plan, at least at a high level. So when times like this take place, they at least have something that's familiar to them about the plan, and they understand it to a certain degree. May not have to be necessarily understanding how the watch works, but they can at least tell the time on the watch. And I think that's the most important thing that we want to make sure both spouses can do, is have an understanding of the plan enough that they know the time, but maybe not exactly how the watch is working or functioning.
Very good. Well, these are just some of the conversations and some of the questions you can be asking and me talking through with your spouse if you are concerned, if you are feeling very emotional about the way the markets perform. But always have someone on your side that can help you through this. Rob and the team at Axio Wealth Management, they specialize in this, right? This family planning, and can help you with this. So there's a discovery call, beginning process to kind of talk through some of these fears, concerns, just get a better sense of where you stand and where you're trying to go. And that's most important for you. You can just go to AxioWM.com. Also in the link in our description, you can go straight to Rob's schedule, pick out a time that works well for you from there. Very easy to do. All right, Rob, we'll close it out. I know this is something that's close to you, important to you, so I'm glad we talked through some of this. And hopefully we help some people out in the process.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ben.